forever finish. Odie's the forever finish.
Hi, my name is Paul Valena. I am the wood flooring support and technician person at Odie's Oil. So when you call with anything and everything have to do with wood floors, you'll probably be talking to me. I've also been traveling the country, training many floor guys, including some of the top at the top level of our industry. Some of you who know me know that I have spent decades in manufacturing inlays and designs. And this floor is one of mine, designed and fabricated 100% in-house. And so far, this floor, believe it or not, it's in its raw state. Even though you see color on it, it is white oak and maple. It has been treated with a reactive coloring process. So there's no finish, no stain. Okay, this is just a chemical reaction that I have concocted over the years with different ratios of different chemicals to get this color. And so for all intents and purposes, this is raw wood, and we're just starting the finishing process with Odie's oil. You 9 times out of 10 would be mixing pigment into either the super duper oil, which is the thinner consistency of the two main oils that wood floor guys will use, which is the super duper oil, the thinner one. You can maybe zoom in then on this one. Or if you're gonna go for a one coat process, you'll probably go right to the universal oil. The best overall performance and muscle is in the universal. However, if you're gonna do a 2-coat system, or especially when you're gonna mix pigment into the oil, you are better off starting with the super duper due to its thinner consistency. For obvious reasons, it will mix better with pigments, which is, Odie's pigments are powder. They come in a powder form. So when you add a lot of powder to the already thick universal oil, it can become a little difficult to work with, and you have to add solvents. So to kind of backtrack, you're swimming against the current at that point. So why not just start with the thinner oil, the super duper, and you can add more pigment to it. It's better for staining, right? So I'm not going to be adding pigment this time because the color came from the reactive process. But when you're doing a 2-coat system, you kind of get the best of both worlds. You get the thinner oil first, and then as a second application, you can do 24 hours, but if you have the time, I like to wait 48 hours. There's less of a chance of reactivating the oil. But the thinner super duper oil rarely will be activated even in 24 hours. But even if it's a 5% chance, why take that chance if I have the time, which I do, because this is my house. So that's where I put this floor. Anyway, when you start with any of the oils, first thing you do is you need to mix it up. The oil is on top, so it's very important that this jar gets stirred very well. And throughout the process, give it a stir once in a while. For the edges, we're going to use the center of the red pad to rub the edges in. And we're going to use a red pad on the buffer to work the oil in. Circular motion, back and forth, back and forth. You don't want to just kind of brush it on or one of these things and thinking you're done. Odie's oil, the heart and the soul and the performance of the oil comes from basically kicking his butt. Meaning, don't be easy with it, don't be nice with it, rub it in hard, work it, because that is how it will become part of the wood. I'm putting a bit too much, I don't want to work all that. I'm staying away from the edge for a while, because I don't want to put a puddle against the trim. Okay, I'm done rubbing in the edges in a U shape. I went up to by the light switch. And now I'm going to do the red pad with the buffer. I'm going to show you both ways of applying. One directly into the pad, and the second is directly onto the floor. Once I get going, I prefer version 2, meaning drip on the floor, so I don't have to stop and go and take the pad off and keep putting oil onto the pad. But initially, because the pad's going to feed itself some of the oil, so when you start, you're going to waste a little oil going into the pad, right? And then that kind of stops after a while. For a regular 110 buffer, this one is amazing because it's really heavy. And the more weight, the better as far as applying the oil, because you want friction and heat. Okay, and you get friction and heat from weight. So use your heaviest buffer. So this is a happy medium, an old beat up, really old beat up, but heavy, regular 175 RPM buffer. Will demonstrate that you don't need the fancy ones. But if you can get your hands on one of those more modern ones that are heavier, especially with the weight, you will have to heal the buffer less. So you will see what I mean. I'll show you when I heal the buffer. First I'm going to go fast just to kind of spread the oil approximately. The application. I'm just sort of getting an approximately even coverage onto the floor. This is way too fast for the application. This is just the first general spreading, okay? Do not confuse. It's the most important part. This is not how you handle the buffer with Odie. So when you heal the buffer, not only does it create more friction and heat and drives more oil into the floor, but it also stretches the oil further. You get more mileage out of the same little bit of oil. And that will make your step 2 buff-off easier. But also, very importantly, that friction and heat also starts the polymerization process. So for all these reasons, it's important that what I'm about to do next is what you remember, not the real quick spreading, but the very, very slow, 1 inch per second speed. And I'll be also healing the buffer to get more friction. And you're really stretching the oil even more that way. So. from this point on, at first I fed the pad. But from this point on, I'm not gonna be stopping and removing the pad and pouring oil into the pad every time. I prefer to just simply do this. You could also do a pancake on the floor, pancake shaped floor puddle. I like this better. First I'm gonna drive the buffer fast to pick this up and sort of approximately distribute it. That's not the application, that's just an approximate distribution of the oil. Then I'll come back to the slow actual application. Crescent moon shaped little lines that you can't see from there. That's what I want to see, because that means the wood has been fully fed and there's a little bit extra that cannot go anywhere. That's perfect. That's our visual, that's my visual cue to know that there's enough oil on the floor. So it's very important that the oil has to be worked in slowly, and that is where the muscle and the performance is. Remember, there is no heat and friction without slow speed. I'm gonna go pick up the little extra residue. Oh, I felt it right there. It grabs, when there's a little too much there. Grabs the buffer, you can feel it. So you pick up the extra oil, do your second row. So it has been about an hour now since we completed the oiling. So the above section begins, which has two parts to it. One, the white pad, and then these racks. However, you don't have to do the white pad along the edges. You can wipe the edges off with the rag right away. And then for the main floor, we'll do both the white pad and the rags. So, when you first start to rub it off, buff it off, you feel some resistance at first. And suddenly, it kind of glides easy. When it glides easy, that means you got all the excess off. When there's resistance, just keep going back and forth, and suddenly you'll feel that it just suddenly glides very easily. Then you're good. Okay, so now I wiped up the edges with the towel. Now the white pad under the buffer. Then we'll do the towels under the white pad. So the buff-off has two parts to it with the buffer. You don't have to heal the buffer this time, but you still have to go slow. It takes time for the oil to get into the pad to absorb the excess oil. You're gonna do about 100 square feet per side. So tiny little bit. The first pad was a lot more oil on it. Kept changing it. And I used 2 pads for this space, pad and a half, let's say. Now is the towel. You want to use a terry cloth, cotton terry cloth towel, not microfiber and not synthetic anything. And just a good old-fashioned cotton terry cloth. And much like the same way as we did the white pad, same exact thing. And the reason why, by the way, why you didn't need to do white pad on the edges, I just went straight to the terry cloth. You're just getting that 1/4 inch excess oil that the buffer can't get. But that's why you don't need to do the white pad by hand. And likewise, as with the white pad, you want to be changing that, keep looking at it periodically and maybe every 80 to 100 square feet. If you put on the oil the way I taught you to healing the buffer, it will go 100 square feet. But it might only be 50 square feet if you put too much oil on, right? The point is you gotta remove everything. So you gotta keep checking your white pad and the towel, make sure that it's still clean. If it's sticky and you got a good buildup on it, change it. That is not where you want to save money.
The forever finish. Odie's 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 the forever finish.
Done with the towel buff-off process. The test that you want to do to see if you have removed enough and everything is make sure you dry your fingers. No sweaty fingers, no oily fingers. It's hard because you've been working with oil. Even when you wipe it really hard in a dry towel, there's still a bit of a residue, but try to clean your hand as much as possible, make sure it's dry. Then, with a medium pressure, rub your fingers into the wood. If you're leaving any marks whatsoever, you gotta keep buffing. I can see nothing, no marks whatsoever. So the floor is dry. When you did your job right, you didn't put too much oil on. You spread it with the way I taught with the healing. Or even if you did put a little extra on, but as long as you removed it all, the floor should be dry to the touch. As soon as you're done buffing off, and with socks, you'll be able to walk on it. With shoes, I would say the next day. Water resistance, typically after 3 days. But full cure is about 2 weeks. Don't put any area rugs down during that time. But again, if you're leaving marks or if your towel is dirty, sticky, keep going until your towel is clean and until you can rub your hand. Actually, not just medium pressure, it's all my strength. Nothing, no marks at all. So that's pretty cool. And this was the first application. We don't say coat because we're not a film forming product. So the first feeding of the wood, if you will, with the Super Duper, the regular universal Odies, I'm gonna do in 48 hours. Like I said earlier, you could do it the next day, unless it's humid, super humid, and there's no AC in the house and cold, but mostly humidity, then you definitely want to wait 48 hours. Typically, 24 hours is in a dry, warm environment is enough. But again, I'm just gonna play it super safe and wait 48 hours. Then I'm gonna repeat everything again with the universal oil. And once you fed the wood with this thinner oil as much as it can take, it's gonna now take a lot less of the universal oil as well. Any questions? Feel free to email me, call me. I'll put the contact info at the end of the video. Take care.
Odie's the forever finish. Odie's the forever finish. Odie's the forever finish. Odie's the forever finish.